This episode contains descriptions of gun violence and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. To speak to someone at the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, call 988. The Lifeline is 24/7, free, and confidential.
I would advise anybody listening to buckle up right now, because this gets wild.
Jay Wilson has had many jobs.
My degree was in city planning. I was a city planner.
But he couldn't find work in that field. So he worked his way up from the stockroom to a logistics executive at Target. But then in 2008,
my wife pushed me to go to broadcast school.
Then he lost his job at Target and got a job at a radio station. He did the radio thing successfully for a while, but it wasn't paying as well as he needed it to. So he went into sales. But that was never the end goal.
But I started my business, Full Spectrum Enterprises. At the time, all I was doing was trying to help mom and pop shops with their branding and their marketing. I had dreams that were ridiculous as far as I was concerned, but I never, ever gave up on them. And I knew I had put in some time working in my craft, and I was ready to take the next step.
Getting a new business started is hard, and Jay used his extensive list of contacts from all his previous lives to drum up business. It was going just okay until
a college buddy reached out to me and said, "Hey, look, I have somebody who fits the profile of the businesses you're looking for, the mom and pop shops you're looking for. You know, go down there, they'll treat you to lunch and everything and stuff, and see what they have and see if you can put together a package for them." So I'm at this point where I'm like, hey, I have a chance to get my first real client. You know, not the, oh, my brother's friend's wife knows you, we go to church together, so, you know, we'll do this one thing for you. That's not real.
This was hopefully going to be the break Jay needed. But he got a message from an old friend asking for help with getting a promotion. So on October 1st, 2015, he decided to go over to her apartment quickly before his big meeting. His friend lived in an apartment complex, and Jay didn't know exactly where his friend's apartment was.
The leasing office is right in front of you. As soon as you turn in, it's not a very expansive apartment complex. It's just long. And so you can either go left or right. I just make a decision. Just park. I'm like, okay, let me go left. Oh, is this 41A? Okay, cool. I think I'm in the right spot. But I'm looking around and I'm like, I don't see her car. So I'm calling her. And as the phone is ringing, this white pickup truck, I mean, speeds in off of like two wheels right behind me and blocks me in like a T. And I was like, oh man, I messed up.
This is Live to Tell, the podcast where I talk to some of the bravest people who have been through the most horrifying things and lived to tell the tale. I'm Caitlin Van Mall.
And a guy jumps out the car, and I'm looking in the rear view as this is happening. I go from the rear view to the side view, and I go to the side view mirror. He's at my window, and I was like, "Oh, Jesus Christ!" He scared the crap out of me. And he knocks on the window. "Hey, man, what the are you doing here?" And I was like, "Whoa, hold up! Like, hey, man, I just got here. Rude, like, you know, that's what I'm thinking." You know, there was one lady out there at the time, one. And I looked at her, made eye contact, and she was smoking a cigarette as if to say, don't bother me. And so I was like, okay, you know what? Black grandma, I'm not going to bother you. My friend picks up, but I'm now talking to this guy. As I'm watching him, he's got veins popping out of the temple. Next thing you know, I see him standing sideways to the car, and he's holding his arm low. And I was like, oh, Jesus, he's got a gun. It's just the posture. And he's angry. Next thing you know, in his other hand, he's got a phone in his hand and he's yelling into the phone, "I'm sick and tired of this BS, MF and BS, yada, yada." Yeah, and just yelling. So at the time I had my seatbelt buckled So I unbuckle my seatbelt slowly. I don't make it make a sound because he asked me to roll the window down. So I wasn't rolling the window down, but I also know that if I was getting robbed or carjacked, pissing people off is not a good idea. I get my seatbelt off nice and slithery, and I scooch up on the center console like I have my butt on the center console at this point. As I get ready to make my exit through the passenger door and just take a run for it, because I'm thinking he wants the car. So yeah, take the car, bro. You can have the car. Don't hurt me. Well, at that very moment I had that thought, he extends his arm and puts one right through my driver's side window. And because I was elevated, the shot went right into my hip joint. Shattered my leg, shattered my femur, zigzag shattered. I got shot with a magnum. My leg was dangling like a piece of meat. I grabbed both sides of my knee to try and hold my leg together. And I cannot believe what in the world is going on right now. I hear click, click, click.
The man's gun had jammed.
I look over, and this bastard is still trying to shoot me. And I was like, oh shoot, he's trying to kill me. I for sure had the resolve to finally slump over to the passenger seat. I pushed that door open. On the passenger side, I fell right to the ground because I thought I was going to get away. I don't know what I was thinking. Just fight or flight, right? And I couldn't fight. My leg was dangling like a piece of meat off a chicken bone. So,
yeah, but to put as much distance and the actual physical car between you and the shooter is...
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I just wanted to get out of the way of the gunfire.
From where he was on the ground, Jay could see the shooter's feet walking around the car towards the passenger side.
I can't get away. I can't get it. Like I'm slithering to try to, he's going to catch me. I'm talking to the dude. I'm like, hey man, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what I did, but you don't have to do this. And I'm grabbing his shirt, the bottom of his shirt. Like, hey man, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this, man. I swear I didn't do anything. I'm begging, I'm pleading. I'm just trying to talk sense into him. When I looked him dead in his eyes, nothing. And I realized right at that moment, this is a done deal.
The man had pulled the slide back and fixed the jam.
And he puts the gun right here to my temple. I'm looking at it so I can see his forearm right here. I saw his forearm flex. I also heard an audible voice say, turn your head. With slow motion, Caitlin, I cannot explain this.
Jay turned, so instead of being shot in the forehead, it hit him in the back of the head.
And obviously that shot knocked me completely out. But he was resolved to try to kill me. So he ended up shooting me in the throat, in the belly button, in the ribs. The same lady, and she looked at it like, don't bother me. I'm smoking my cigarette. Leave me alone. This lady knew the guy who shot me. She lifted up her window and said, stop shooting that boy. You gonna kill him. Do you know that after he had shot me 5 times, gun butted me, I had bruises all over my body. Like it was an entire fit rage he was in. He was trying to decimate my body. That's the moment he snapped out of it. He kind of turns his head to the side. He looks and he bends down as if to get a closer look at me and realized I wasn't the guy he was looking for. Mistaken identity. He literally thought I was the guy that he caught in bed with the mother of his children just a few days earlier. And he jumped in his pickup truck and sped off.
The man who shot Jay was Milton Bowden. The day before Jay pulled into the parking lot to help his friend, Milton had found the mother of his children in bed with a man who looked like Jay, drove the same car as Jay, and wore a very similar fedora as Jay. Milton didn't live in the apartment with her, but he was sitting across the street watching to see if the man would return. So when this man's doppelganger, Jay, drove in and parked by the woman's apartment, Milton acted. Jay's friend had been on the phone the whole time, and she rushed across the complex to help him.
Now, my friend is the daughter of an old country preacher old Baptist country preacher, and she laid her hand on me. And at the time she laid her hand on me, she said my chest was not breathing up and down. I was lifeless. I wasn't breathing. Face down. And she put her hand on my back and she started praying. And she said, God, his family needs him. His wife and children need him. His mother and father need him. I need him. Everybody needs him. You can't take him. Right as she was finishing her prayer, the ambulance came.
Mm-hmm.
The reason the ambulance got to me so quickly is because there was a dear old blue-haired lady right down the street who had fainted, and the paramedics were administering aid to her. So they were already in the area, which in general would have took 10 minutes to get to me. And somebody who's been shot 5 times with magnum bullets, that's a death sentence. But they got to me in half the time. They turned me over. All of a sudden I gasped. The blood, teeth fly out of my mouth and everything, hole in my face. They put me on a gurney, and the gurney is flat. It lays low. And then, it snaps up. It was like an accordion, and kind of, I jarred awake again.
Jay was in and out of consciousness as the paramedics worked on him.
But man, when I tell you, I could hear everything. Out of all the commotion, I hear this country twang. Hey, buddy, what you doing down here? And I remember thinking to myself, you mother, how in the world, why are you are you questioning me on the gurney? And I remember being pissed. Like, are you questioning me? Like, and then I didn't have the words to say it. So I answered his question. I just remember answering his question, but I didn't really tell him why I was in Forsyth. I told him why I originally was headed down that way, and that was to see this client in Barnesville. And I remember being pissed when I heard the question. I remember being pissed about it. So to the tune of like, I wasn't even supposed to be here. I was supposed to be in Barnesville. All right. Now, I don't know what about that said drug deal, but apparently my friend who was screaming bloody murder, who found me and all that, she was standing next to detectives, and they were talking about it as I was being put in the ambulance. And they, unfortunately, it's Monroe County, Georgia, so, draw your conclusions here, people, but they thought it was a drug deal gone bad. It's 2 African-American gentlemen that don't seem to have any other connection. It's a drug deal gone bad.
But Jay couldn't worry about that false assumption. He needed to focus on staying awake and alive.
I'm in the ambulance. I'm kind of going in and out of consciousness, I guess. All I kept remembering is they were like, hey, stay with me. Stay with me. Come on, Jay. Stay with me. Stay with me. Don't cry. You can't go to sleep. So I remember thinking to myself, that's easier said than done, And I said, well, okay, let me see how bad I am. So I looked down, and I have blood jumping out of my stomach. And I kept hearing them say 4 GSW gunshot wound. We got a 4 GSW, prepare the hospital, yada, yada, they call ahead of time. I look over because I'm thinking somebody's tapping me. This is crazy, Caitlin. I'm thinking somebody's tapping me on the shoulder. There's blood jumping out of my face. And I'm thinking to myself, I'd imagine somebody should want to patch that up, right? Like,
can we do something about this?
You do so
I feel like that should be staying in.
Shouldn't be. But the guy's holding the IV, and he's looking, he said, Mr. Wilson, do you know where you were hit? I can't talk. And I point to my leg, and he was like, 5 GSW, 5 GSW. So he's just like, oh shit, we missed one. You know what I mean? So I started to close my eyes so I can pray. I'm a praying man. And as I closed my eyes, he's like, Mr. Wilson, you gotta stay with me. And I was like, I wanted to tell him, I'm like, I'm not closing my eyes to go to sleep. I'm closing my eyes to pray. But I was like, son, I literally just prayed with my eyes wide open.
When they finally arrived at the hospital, it was all hands on deck.
I felt like I was in a scene from House or Grey's Anatomy or something all of a sudden, or even ER back in the day. And I was a training. So there's a bunch of people who are training to be surgeons. I come up in the ER, and there's 16 doctors. Like, I don't know who's who. There's 16 of them. I was like, holy crap. What in the hell happened to Macon today? How many people got shot? Caitlin, I look to my left, I look to my right. I'm the only one in the freaking OR. Oh, they're here for me. They're all here for me.
How is there room just around a person for 16 people?
It's crazy. The room was just flooded with people. And what they would do is there was like 4 or 5 at a time that would come. Because I had 5 gunshots. So there was an orthopedist looking at my leg. There was a trauma guy looking at my head. And there was a guy looking at my intestines. You know, same guy looking at my intestines, looking at my ribs. Then there was a different guy looking at my throat. There was 3, 4 different doctors, and they all had like training people with them. And it was like, okay, see what? And now they start talking to each other to figure out, okay, which surgery does he get first?
Jay was in a coma for 3 days. His jaw and his leg had to be reconstructed. And for someone that talks for a living, the damage to his face and throat was devastating. He had to accept there would be a long recovery ahead of him. But there were also some spookier aspects to his recovery.
The only saving grace I have is that the Mets were in the World Series that year. Maybe they're doing it for me. You know, they're superstitious. I was like, yeah, 5 bullets is going to equal a World Series, you know.
That's not the spooky part. I would love to tell you the Mets went all the way for Jay, but they lost the series to the Royals 4-1.
The funny part is when I'm trying to watch the World Series, Caitlin, I kept hearing voices straight out of the movie, straight out of Touched by an Angel. I'm hearing audible voices when nobody's around. I heard the words, forgive him. And I was like, hell, no, won't do it. Nah, not me, not happening. No. As soon as I get out of here. Yeah, that hard pass. Because as soon as I get out of here, I'm going to wrap my hands around his throat. And I'm, like I was resolved to kill the guy. Like I was that angry. Obviously, I was taught differently. But that's the way I felt. So I brushed that off, just turned the game up louder. I'm on the good stuff, by the way. Like I got Tramadol, I got morphine, I got all kind of stuff. So I'm just like, I'm hallucinating. I didn't hear that. Second night, it's even stronger. It's, you must forgive him. These were women's voices I'm hearing, and it was a number of women taking care of me. It was a number of women nurses and stuff. So I'm like, so who keeps saying, forgive this sumbitch?
His hallucinations also veered into the cartoonish, literally.
It was a coloring book. Off to the right, I will never forget this, Caitlin. It was a coloring book. It was a Disney coloring book. It was clearly left behind, I guess, by the last people that might have been in there or something like that. I don't know. I looked right at the coloring book. I swear, as God is my witness, I'm not making this up. Goofy and Donald Duck came out of the book and they started talking. They weren't just talking, though. They were talking like blaxploitation figures, like you jive turkey, like that. This is how bad morphine is, guys. I'm not good enough of a writer to even make this up. So when I saw that, I was just like, Jesus Christ, man, I just want to go home. I just want to get home. I don't want to be here anymore.
While he didn't take blaxploitation Goofy seriously, he did put credence into the voices telling him to forgive.
Guys, it's very easy for me to dismiss this, but this is how God works. The third night, he didn't just audibly speak to me with a voice. I was like, all right, you're not hearing me, so this is what I'm going to do. So a nurse, her name was Delois. It was her time to get off. She's on the phone, getting ready to go. Comes in and gets her purse, and she's like, on the phone, and I'm hearing her conversation. She said, yeah, girl, I'm on the way to the book club. It's something about forgiveness. And I was like, yo, no way. And at that moment, there is nothing in the room. TV's off. There's nothing but this light shining over the bed. And it's just me, what I just heard, and God. And I have a conversation with God at this moment. And I just say, this is you, isn't it? all of this is you. You're doing this is like the Old Testament, like stuff I used to learn in Sunday school. Like, come on, this isn't happening. You want me to forgive the guy? How am I going to forgive him? What did you see what he did to me? I can't speak. I'm a voice artist. I use my voice to make a living. I can't do it. I can't do it. At this moment, at 36 years old, I am praying the worst prayer I've ever prayed in my life. This whole forgiveness thing, like, I can't do it. If you can do it if you want to come in my heart and do it, because I can't do it. That was the prayer. God was like, okay. I was just waiting. I was waiting for you. Because I don't know, if you're listening to this and you don't have a spiritual life and you don't believe in this, and God bless you, and it's fine. But for those who are believers and have been around this, you know that the rule is God doesn't make you do anything. You have to give permission. Like you are born of free will. You have to make a choice. Can I state a definition of forgiveness? Is that okay?
Sure.
Absolutely. So a definition of forgiveness for me is not letting somebody off the hook. I'm writing and I've written a whole book about it. It's coming out this year. 5 Shots to Forgiveness, My Triumph Over Tragedy. In that, I talk about forgiveness is the permission that you give yourself to not be imprisoned by the trauma that came upon you. What you're really doing is saying, I no longer allow what you did to control me. And once you make a choice, then that's when miracles can happen sometimes, because you've allowed the space for it. I don't want to debate with anybody about whether that stuff is real or not. That's up to you. I'm just talking about what's real in my life.
This moment of forgiveness didn't just have an impact emotionally. It had a physical one as well.
My blood pressure, because of my anger, had been hovering. I was pushing 200. I can't remember if it's diastolic over systolic. I don't know which one is which, but my top number...
I don't know what either of those words mean.
One of them's the top number, one's the bottom number of your blood pressure. I think it's diastolic over systolic, I think. But the top number was pushing toward 200. This is stroke levels. All right, that's how angry I was. And the nurses were telling me, you're not going to make it because your blood pressure is out of control. You are going to have to find a way to breathe. And it's just, you're telling somebody who's been shot 5 times to calm down, essentially, right?
But the morning after this prayer, when the nurse came in to take his blood pressure, she was stunned.
The next morning, 132 over 82. The very next morning, Caitlin, 132 over 82. She took it on my right arm. She did it manually. Then 132 over 82. She was like, you know what? I'm going to get the machine. And I was like, okay. Yeah. And I can't speak. I'm like, whatever. I just got my arm out. She puts the machine on it. She looked at me. She said, Mr. Wilson, I don't know what you're doing, but you better do that every day now.
A huge milestone in Jay's initial recovery was getting his tracheostomy tube taken out and being able to breathe through his nose and mouth. The tube goes in a hole at the bottom of the throat. Jay started with a fairly large-sized tube, but he was healing quickly, so they had to replace it with a smaller and smaller tube until the time came where he didn't need it at all.
So they come to remove the trach, to size me for either my last trach tube or not at all. The doctor comes in, she wasn't the one who did it. She didn't insert it. She was just the person who would come and check on it and change it out. She couldn't get it out. She started tugging, and it's like pulling me, and I'm like, she said, well, let's go get Dr. Johnson and we'll get this thing out. So Dr. Johnson comes waltzing in the room. Hey there, Mr. Wilson. It's good to see you. Wow. Yeah, you are healing. And something. I was like, tugs again. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to hit someone. I'm going to strike you. I just made up my mind. I'm going to strike you. That's what that's what I'm going to hit a doctor. Sure am. Because you guys keep tugging at this thing and it's not coming. This is where this man outsmarted me. He's not looking at me anymore. He's looking at this nurse over here, this doctor over here, but he's got his hand on it the whole time. And he's like, yeah, so what we can do is it just rips it out of my throat. And I go, just like that. Right. But I don't hear it. And I had my fist balled up and I literally raised it. And he took his hand and he covered it. And he said, Mr. Wilson, did you hear that? And I said, what? I said, what? Oh my God. And I was raspy. I was like, what? Oh my God, I was hugging. I got my voice back right at that moment. My sister was peeking in at the door the whole time. I didn't see her. She comes busting in the room. It's my baby sister. God bless her. Comes busting in the room. Oh my God. And she came and hugging me. We are snotting all over each other. And I'm just boo-hooing. And I'm just like, all I did was pray. All I did was like, I half-hearted forgave him. I didn't even mean it. Like, in my mind, I was just like, yeah, whatever. Like, I forgive him.
Yeah,
Whatever.
I'm sorry. I forgive you.
Whatever you want, God. Whatever.
It's like when your parents tell you to like apologize to your siblings.
Yes, it was
Sorry.
exactly like that. But the thing is, I said, I can't do it. And the thing is, if you have a spiritual walk of any kind, honesty is the most important thing. When we remove ourselves, when we remove our egos out of anything, you open up the possibilities to really see it for what it is. And if you don't ever see it for what it is, you can never heal.
While he was swiftly progressing in his healing, Jay didn't find out what happened to his shooter until 16 days later.
When he found his woman in bed with the other guy, he ran out of there crying. Because he's a regular guy like me. So when he runs out of there, spares both of them. Apparently, he gets his hands on a gun in the meantime, and he's goes to a motel. His mother sends him Western Union to go to a motel, chill out, just get a hold of yourself, whatever, blah blah blah. Don't do anything crazy. Just go get a hold of yourself. But unfortunately, while he was there, I guess he's thinking about it. He's stewing, and he's getting more angry and more angry and more angry. And he decides to make a call.
So Milton got his gun and went back to the apartment complex and waited across the street to see if the man would show up again.
The guy who shot me is the nephew of my friend that I went to see in the first place.
But if he was standing across the street, do you think he just saw you as you pulled in?
Yes.
And it just wouldn't have mattered which way you went. If he was already at a point where he was murdering.
So here's the kicker, though. If I end up in front of her apartment and she comes out to greet me, he sees her. She sees him. And then it's like, because if he's shooting me outside her apartment, even on the first shot didn't kill me. None of them killed me. But the first shot, she would have come out. She would have been like, what? And she would have seen him and would have been like, Milton, what are you doing?
Unfortunately, Jay had turned left instead of right. After the shooting, the police were out looking for Bowden and ended up searching in the right place, kind of by accident.
When I said I was supposed to be in Barnesville, they assumed the guy who shot me was supposed to be in Barnesville as well. So they set up an APB. He was headed to Barnesville, but for a totally different reason. He was just trying to get the hell out of Dodge. He was on the run. And so he jumped on the nearest little state road and it took him, he was headed there. They were waiting for him. But he saw him ahead of time and spikes in the road, the whole nine, all that jazz. And before he could get to it, they have those grassy knoll medians. Apparently he hopped it, like in the middle of trying, like he hopped it and everything and stuff, because they're trying to clear the roads and they're waiting on him. It's going down. And he's headed now back south. Like he's on his way to Florida. He's trying to get really out of Dodge now. So now we got a full police chase going on in the county he was from. They were trying not to pit maneuver him, shoot at the car, nothing. Like they didn't want, it was a populated enough area. When you're going through Macon, that's a populated enough area that if he spills out in the middle of the road, he'll take out how many people. And now you got a bigger mess, right?
And Bowden still had the gun.
They get right up on him. And every time they got close to him, he would put the gun to his head, as if to say, I'll blow my brains out right on this highway. He knew that would get them to back off so he could keep on getting away.
Yeah.
So by the time, when you get to the next county line, they have to end the chase and the next people have to pick it up. Right. So by the time he got to that last county, they were waiting on him. They didn't care. They didn't give him. I mean, the moment he got over the county line, they pit maneuvered him. He spun out and went down the embankment on the side of the road. Because down here in Georgia, we got these. You got highways and you just got embankments. You don't have a lot of guardrails down here. You just fall to the side of the road. And so he's upside down on the side of the road in a ditch, and he decides to take his gun, put it to his head, and blow his own head off. Same gun he shot me with. He dies on impact. The real crazy part for me is that he called his mom on the way. And I know this because I'm in contact with her. We talk every month. And she told me he called her right after he did this, and he was just apologetic. He said, "Mom, I really messed up. I really messed up this time. I think I got the wrong guy." And she said, "What are you talking about? What did you do? What did you do?" "I'm sorry, Mom. I shot him. I didn't mean. I didn't know. Just panicking." And said, "I'm sorry." And she heard the gunshot when it went off. He was stolen from her. So it's just traumatic all the way around.
But Bowden had never planned to survive the day.
He left a note in that truck, and it was essentially like murder suicide note, where he wrote out what he was going to do. He was going to shoot him. He was going to shoot the kids first, then the wife, then himself, because he didn't want the kids to even witness any of this. So in his mind, it was mercy, right? He knew, he had resolved that he was going to kill her. So if he kills her, in his mind, he's like, well, I kill her. She's dead. I go to jail. Kids are orphans. I'm not doing that to them. I'm not doing that. Because when he was young, his family was broken up due to infidelity. So he got trauma triggered with all of this. And so in his mind, he made sense of like, this is mercy. This world is cruel. This world is awful. They won't have to ever grow up in that kind of mess.
Had Jay known this the day of the shooting, his forgiveness journey would have looked very different.
I'll be honest with you, if I got the story first, the forgiveness would be easier. I had to forgive without the story because I was going through it physically, and I was like, this is BS. This is BS. And when I get out of here, I was motivated to get better so I could get out of there and go on a search and destroy mission. So when I was asked to forgive, I was doing it on blind faith. Absolute blind faith.
Once Jay learned the full story, he couldn't help but feel empathy for Bowden.
And so now I started thinking about it this way. How would you feel? What would you do, Jay? Would you just take it like a G and just, oh, well, these are the breaks. My wife just keeps doing this to me and publicly humiliating me and screwing another dude in our bed. Now, see, the difference between homeboy and me? The first time I'd have put my hands on him. The first time. So he walked out the first time. I thought about it. I might have snapped. I don't own a gun, so I wouldn't have shot nobody, but there's a butcher knife in the kitchen. I don't know what I could have done. It's just, you break from reality. You don't know. So I just started putting myself in his position.
What I'm hearing from you for all of this, when you talk about that man's situation, you're telling it with such empathy and understanding that honestly, I find it perplexing.
Yes.
Because, yes, we can have empathy. Like, his wife was cheating on him. He had a horrible life. But that happens to lots of people, and they don't shoot anyone. They don't make a plan to kill their partner and their children.
That is very true.
So how did you get to that place of this understanding that you have and empathy? How do you feel that way?
I had to remove myself. I don't understand how you could do that to children. I don't understand. Like, I'm gonna keep it real. I don't wish death upon nobody, but if homegirl was to catch one, I'd be like, well, not that anybody deserves to die because you cheat. Like, let me be very Explicit. Like, I'm not advocating go kill somebody if you catch them. No, not at all. But man, you put this dude through it and he snapped, right? But man, what them babies had to do with it? The babies had nothing to do with it. I'm very close with my friend. I'm leaving her name out for her protection, but
Mhm.
I'm very close with her. She's like a sister to me. And she talked about her family all the time on the job. Oh, that crazy nephew of mine, he need to get himself together, blah, blah, blah. I had heard about him. I didn't know this was him in front of me. The hard part for me, Caitlin, is I felt like I could have mentored him. I could have, like, hey, bro, I'm going through it right now. Could have helped him. He was 29 years old when he shot himself. I was 36 when he shot me. I'd just been there. Bro, I'd just been there, done that. I had my son right after my 30th birthday, but we got pregnant when I was 29. I'd been there, bro. He had a newborn. Like, we could have talked through this. I could have helped him. That haunts me to this day. Because I talk to young men all the time. I talk to guys that are a little younger than me, but especially teenagers and stuff. Like, I had way more to impart into him than he tried to take from me.
Have you ever talked to the mother of the kids or the kids?
No, she refuses to meet me.
So you've tried?
I've tried through their grandmother, which is Milton's mother. I talk to her all the time.
Yeah.
This is a tough one. Yeah, this one's tough. I just want to hug him. I just want to hug him. I didn't plan on saving their lives. I didn't plan on interfering. I didn't plan on taking their bullets, but I did. And all I want in return is I just want to hug them. I just want to tell them that they deserve to be here. You know, there's a part of me, I have to tell. Forgive me. I have to tell my story, but there's a part of me that would hope that they never hear the whole thing.
Mm.
I don't want them to ever know that their father intended to kill them. And it's a burden that I don't know. I don't know how to, how can you even reconcile that? The youngest of the two children, she was a newborn when this was happening. She doesn't even know. He's a ghost to her,
Yeah.
right? Maybe it's God's divine order that I haven't met him. Why is this guy hugging us? But yeah, I just want to wrap my arms around those babies. I really do, because time has flown so much. They're now 12 and 8.
Mm. About the same age your kids were at the time.
Yeah, right, at that age.
Though Jay did come out of that day alive, he has complicated feelings on surviving.
And I got to tell you, surviving is hard. Everybody, surviving is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Death is actually kind of easy. Like, I know that's not popular to hear, but it's not easy for everybody else. But for me, it would have been easy. I'm just dead, right? Like, surviving and trying to even find some sense of normalcy is awfully difficult. And yet, I sound like a complete, a-hole to those kids. It's like, yeah, man, our dad is dead. So there's no pretty truth. There's days I'm left thinking about the fact that someone tried to murder me. This is a tough thought. The only thing that really helps me with that, honestly, is the fact that he's dead. And I hate that he's dead. I actually hate that he's dead because I wanted a chance to talk to him. But I have survivor's remorse because I survived and a guy on my floor of the hospital who got shot one time died while I was there. And I had to see his family.
Mm.
We started out in a room with a curtain partition. And then I got moved to another room. He got moved to a room that was like across the hall. I saw the day he died. That was really tough. I felt guilty. Why am I surviving? And that little girl that walked through the hallway, she just lost her dad.
But Jay had kids of his own that needed help processing what happened to their dad.
But I'm just now hearing from. We had a conversation last week just about how bad it was to see me, right? Yeah, they saw me when they made the decision in the hospital to take me off the walker and put me on a not a cane, the crutches first. I had to do a test where I could walk the length of the hallway one way and then all the way back. On the way back from the first lap with the walker, my wife and my son and daughter got off the elevator. I mean, my feet were almost not touching. I was so motivated to get to them. My son told me that actually freaked him out because that was really the first time he saw me like that, and I was a shell of myself. And I just leaned over and I got kisses from everybody and everything. I thought it was a great moment. Come to find out, it freaked my son out. It was tough for them because I think they felt like eggshells. You don't want to say anything obvious. How you doing? Like, the hell you think I'm doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm shot, mama. Like,
Yeah. Bad. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. That's like just a few holes. Nothing, no big deal. Just try to be honest with them. When you're honest, it hurts their feelings because they're hurt by what's happening. And then when you're not honest and you try to do it just, no, I can do it myself, fall on your face. Now I'm embarrassed. They try to help me up. No, I'm good. It's just like they can't win.
Yeah.
I honestly felt bad for them.
Jay was finally released from the hospital, but this dynamic only got worse at home.
I'm climbing the steps on my knees because I can't walk. And your family watching you do that is just like it was depressing watching me do that. And then I see the look on their face and now I'm getting depressed at their depression. And then I started flipping. I'm not proud of this, but let the truth be told today. I was like, I'm the one who shot. What are y'all worried about? Like, the hell? You want to trade places? But I hated seeing the look on their face. They were looking at me like I was a poor, lost little puppy dog. And I hated that look, but I wanted them to know I'm aware I'm not right. And thank you for sticking by me.
But Jay found purpose and motivation through his physical recovery.
I'm very active. I used to play with my son. I put on a Power Rangers mask and we jump all through the house and everything. Like, I'm a big kid, but I was a workout demon and I could squat a good 450 pounds. I used to have swole prison muscle. Like, I was walking around looking like thicker DMX, honestly. That actually, when I squatted all that weight as a football player in high school, the doctor told me that's what actually saved my leg. My muscle, I had so much muscle tissue when I got hit with that bullet because it went through my bone and it is literally lodged in my leg right now. And it's stuck in all of my muscle tissue. My leg was in traction for weeks. I mean, like my leg was destroyed. Like, I thought it was destroyed. So losing my mobility and everything, this was devastating on many levels.
And how did you accept, not having that physicality?
No, I'm not Jim Bro anymore. In the year after I was shot, I had a goal, right? I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to first survive, then I'm trying to live. About a month into my rehab, my PT, I saw advertisement for the Draw Change 5K, which is a wonderful nonprofit 5K race in Piedmont Park in Atlanta. And I looked at the date and said October 1st, 2016. I said, oh, God, this is for me.
October 1st, 2016 was exactly 1 year after Jay was shot. But completing a 5K after his leg was shattered signaled to the insurance company that he was all better.
So they stopped paying for my PT. Of course, I couldn't afford it. And I didn't realize my physical therapy was therapy. And I got depressed about it. And when I try to work out by myself, and I don't have Corlette, shout out to Corlette. She is awesome. Corlette Luke, my physical therapist. When I don't have Corlette, who could talk to me a certain way in the way I needed it, or just remind me, hey, are you engaging your core? I get frustrated and I stop. The thing about it is, I know I need a carrot on a stick. Well, the carrot on a stick has had to change. Like in therapy, I learned that the carrot on a stick is not having high cholesterol. The carrot on a stick is living past 75. If you're a black man in America, there's a high chance you will never see 80s. And that is absolutely a sad fact. Like, I may not be a grandparent for another 20 years. Oh, that's very plausible. So that puts me at 65 for the first-time grandparent. Oh, I'm watching my grandkids walk across the stage now. Like, I'm watching that. So, now that becomes the carrot on the stick.
My dad is 75. And he ran a marathon at 63, but he said, you won't regret it if you do it. You only regret it if you don't. And it's
annoyingly spot on.
Yes.
Shout out to Pops. I can't tell you how true that is.
Yeah.
You know what? You can apply that to forgiveness.
Oh, absolutely. You can apply it. You can apply it to rest.
Absolutely.
But perhaps the longest lasting effect of the shooting has been the damage it's done to Jay's family's finances. How insured were you at the time?
Not enough. Not enough. That, man, I could have used that Aflac. Did not have that. I'm living off my wife's insurance, but there was something also called victims assistance that you get. All right. But my God, we waited and waited and waited. And in that time, we were running up credit cards. We were running up everything. And
how much did you get from them?
$7,500. So I'm not still in debt directly from it. Hallelujah. But I've never caught up. I was shot in 2015. I wasn't really back on my feet until the end of 2018. Then the pandemic. Then the strikes.
This is the Writers Guild of America and Screen Actors Guild strikes that lasted almost 5 months in 2023.
The strikes that just happened just crippled everything as an independent filmmaker. I was about to experience a breakthrough last year. I pitched in front of some very high-profile people. Up in smoke. Completely up in smoke.
Do you ever think about where you could have been financially if this didn't happen to you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Not as much anymore. But yeah, over the years, man, you can't help it sometimes. Yeah, I mean, you just can't help but think, right? But I really think that's a trick of the devil, man. Like the what ifs, what coulda, shouldas is so toxic for you and your mental state.
You talked about not being able to go to physical therapy for financial reasons. Were there other things that would have helped you with healing that you couldn't do because of financial stuff?
You know what? Yeah. Regular, good old emotional therapy wasn't as available in 2016. Excuse me. Then we went through the pandemic and everything was becoming free. There's like 8 free sessions with this counselor online and yada yada. That was not available to me in 2016.
What is the most helpful, beneficial thing that's come out of therapy for you?
It's okay not to be okay. It's absolutely okay not to be okay. It's also not okay to stay not okay. So it's okay not to be okay Monday. You can't keep being not okay on Friday. Metaphorically Friday and metaphorically Monday, obviously. But and it's always a process. Just don't wallow. Lean into your emotions. It is okay for me to cuss Milton out every now and again. It's okay to tell him how many MFers he is. It's okay. But I can't stay there.
And forgiving is something he has to do every day.
Forgiveness is not a destination. It's a journey. I really need people to understand it. It's a journey. When you are forgiving someone, it should always be an ing. It should never be forgave.
Yeah, it's not like one and done and then that's it forever.
Never. Almost never. That doesn't mean certain things are forgivable to the point where it's like, I'm not thinking about that anymore and stuff. So there's levels to this. Let's be clear. There's levels to this. But something like attempted murder is something you could think about for the rest of your life.
Though getting shot has drastically changed what Jay thought his life would be, he feels this is something he was meant to endure.
It's called the 5 shots moment. I want to explain this quickly to everybody. You may not have been shot 5 times like me. Might have been once, maybe none. Maybe, unfortunately, you were sexually assaulted or you were hit by a drunk driver. One, you are really not a victim. You are a victor. You have a victory. But you don't have to compare your traumas. I've had people say to me, well, I've been through some stuff, but I ain't never been shot 5 times like you. That's where I stop them immediately and I say, no, we're not going to do that. It's the 5 shots moment. You may not have been shot 5 times like me, but you've had a 5 shots moment in your life. And when you figure out what that truly was, I want you to start with your victim, change to your OR, choose the alternative, and discover your why. And at the end, you'll be left with your victory.
This is Live to Tell. I'm Caitlin Van Mall. You can follow the show on Instagram and TikTok at Live to Tell Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps the show. I'll see you in 2 weeks.